Unmute. Okay, great. Thank you, Nancy. And I'm just going to reiterate that I'm going to try to do this fairly quickly because I think the most important part is the opportunity for you guys to ask us questions and have a dialogue. My name is Alex Hayes. I'm the chair of the Ocean World and Dwarf Planets panel, and my vice chair is Francis Nemo. I have an amazing panel that I get to work with, which has been a lot of fun. And these people have been putting in a lion's share of effort for getting the Ocean World and Dwarf Planets relevant aspects of the Decadal in what I think is very good shape. You can see we have a breadth of early career, mid-career, late career people on this panel with a variety of expertise, and I'm just really happy that we're able to get them together and work with them. So if we go to the next slide, because my computer's not going to change Nancy's slides. We typically meet on Fridays from 1 to 4 Eastern, and we're currently in the mode where we're meeting weekly. Which is basically what we've been doing since last fall, except for a period around the holidays when we started having a couple of breaks in there for folks. We've had a collection of open sessions. I hope that you've been able to see them. Something I only recently found out is the majority of our open sessions are actually recorded. And if you correctly get through the Decadal survey website, you can find them linked off of the panel webpage. So if you want to see any of these talks and you missed them, you can go back and look at them as well as the discussion. If you go to the next slide, it shows a couple more of our open session topics. These are the open session topics that we've had since the last time I've given a report to SBAG, and they were focused on radioactive thermal generators, laboratory experiments in support of ocean world and dwarf planet exploration, the deep space network and ground-based assets for ocean world and dwarf planet science. And we had an amazing open session with a really great discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion for supporting ocean world and dwarf planet exploration on April 30th. So thank you to those panelists. I see one or two of them are actually here today who came to speak with us and garnered or fostered that discussion. Again, I hope that one is also recorded on the Decadal website and you can go read it if you'd like to. I'm sorry, you can go watch it if you'd like to afterwards. If we go to the next slide. This is just a repeat of something I reported out last time, but thanks to all the efforts of the community, there were 144 white papers that we identified as relevant to the ocean world and dwarf planets. And we assigned both primary and secondary reviewers to each white paper, and then provided 2-slide summaries that we generated for each of the white papers and discussed with the entire panel in closed session. We then broke those white papers into 3 categories, prioritized them, and sent summaries as well as the white paper themselves up to the steering committee with recommendations for which ones should be most assuredly discussed at that level. And if you go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to point out that we've used those white papers in that discussion in conjunction with all of the open session discussions that we've had over the past 8 or so months to generate 9 recommendation reports that our panel has sent up to the steering committee and the writing group chapter leads for consideration that involve the various recommendations relevant to ocean world and dwarf planet exploration in the fields of technology, research and analysis, infrastructure, interagency collaborations, lab and fieldwork, planetary protection, New Frontiers recommendations, and now we're currently working on one for flagship related activities. And so these recommendations are based on white paper reviews, open session discussions, and closed session deliberations, and hopefully will be utilized by both the steering committee and the writing group leads to ensure that these priorities get into the various Decadal chapters. So if we go on to the next slide, this slide just shows how we discussed mission concepts that we wanted to suggest for future studies and potential tracing, which is the activity that we're at now. We made a matrix of target versus type of mission and just filled it in to see which ones, where the holes were. And this is how we were early last fall discussing which holes need to be filled with additional studies to make sure that decisions were made with all the available information necessary for the broad spectrum of targets. And one of the reasons I just put this slide in here was to make the same point that Nancy already made, in that a challenge we have in the Ocean World and Dwarf Planets panel is that we are very target rich, which means there are a lot of potential missions that one could envision going out to the ocean worlds, going out to the dwarf planets. So if we head to the next slide, I think I'll just end here. And what I want to emphasize again is that transparency is critical to the Decadal process. And while I know that that we cannot always provide you the information that's going on within deliberations within the Decadal, and that's a National Academy's rule, what we can do is always take input in. And so please feel free to contact me or my vice chair or any of our panel members if you have any comments regarding ocean world or dwarf planet related activities or mission concepts or ideas. And if there are additional open session topics that you'd like to see us conduct, please let me know. For the past few weeks, we've been doing closed session only as we generate these recommendation reports, but I am more than happy to have additional open sessions. If there's additional information that we want to inject into the Decadal process, just let us know. So with that, I'm going to open this up for questions from everybody online here, and thank you for your time.
Great, thanks to both you, Alex and Nancy. There's a lot going on in the chat area. I'm not sure how much of it is questions. There's a lot of dialogue, but if somebody has something they want to interject or ask, this would be a good time.
Yeah, Rick Benzel's here. I just wonder how planetary defense is getting integrated into the report. That's obviously of interest to the SBAG community.
Yeah, I mean, planetary defense is absolutely included in this decadal survey and is being integrated into it. I mean, the specific structure of the chapters or stuff, you know, not really at purview to talk about, but you can see from our open sessions and from the various things that we've been discussing in those sessions and agendas that there's been a lot of topics of interest. So I'm not sure if you have a more specific question or a more pointed question that will help me give you a satisfactory answer.
Sure, I can be more pointed. Is planetary defense being treated as an operational thing that we have to do, or is there science integrated into, you know, what I call the science of planetary defense?
So Carol wrote down in there, who is on the steering group and the vice chair for our panel, that it has its own chapter. And so I can also confirm that it has its own chapter. I'm glad we can say that. I think from the discussions we've had in the open sessions, everybody sees that planetary defense has science and has operational concerns and kind of has independent motivations. And so I think there's been an effort to make sure that planetary defense has its own voice and isn't lost or has to be lumped in or competed against maybe some things that you would do to understand 4.5 billion years ago when you're worried about today and the Earth getting hit by something. So,
right, that was a previous decadal or academy committee and said they shouldn't compete with one another. I always see it as a feedback between the two. You need the science, you need planetary science for planetary defense. And then, you know, what you do, for example, the DART mission is for planetary defense, but we're going to learn about small bodies in the same time. So there's this great feedback. So just to encourage that kind of science, you know, operation science feedback between the two. And anyway, we got the best of the best right in this. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I know the group is working really hard. I mean, there's still a lot of important things to get discussed and actually a lot of priorities, you know, and Carol's on the steering group and can chime in if she'd like at this point, since a lot of those will be done at the steering group, not at the panel level. So sorry to put you on the spot there, Carol, but I see you're actively involved. So maybe you want to say a few words.
Since this is the first time that planetary defense has been included in the statement of task, as Tom Stettler pointed out in the chat, it is a learning experience. So we are, you know, from the small bodies panel side, seeking to educate our colleagues about the importance of planetary defense and the intersections between planetary defense and planetary science. So if we're successful, what comes out in the report is going to be serving the needs of planetary defense, but also very tightly integrated into the overall planetary science recommendations.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that clarity.
I'm gonna have Alex yell at you all because he yelled at OPAG when they didn't ask questions, and then they asked a ton of questions. So I don't know. Come on, you guys got to have more questions than this.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes. You guys did so well. You started late and you finished early in your combined two talks. So.
No other comments. I can take Nancy seriously, and I'll say please ask some questions. This is your chance to provide some input, or we'd happy to discuss.
Okay, there's a good question from Jesse. Why don't you take that one, Alex?
I would say the PMCS, selected PMCS studies were and are being evaluated alongside any additional studies that were created as part of the Decadal and the studies that were conducted as part of Visions and Voyages in the last Decadal, and are all given equal consideration. And the steering committee is the one that's going to be prioritizing those to see which ones go out for costing, and then eventually which ones go out for prioritization in either New Frontiers list or flagship recommendations. So they're not getting special consideration, they're getting equal consideration to all the other mission studies. And if Carol has anything to add to that as being a member of the steering committee, please do.
No, that's exactly right.
This is in the backup slides, actually, and so I just brought this up to address Jesse's question about the state of the profession. So this is just a screenshot from the publicly available website, so not giving anything away here. But you can see that we do have this state of profession group. They have regular meetings. There's various other things listed on here. And you'll see that this goes back to that messy diagram that I was showing you. This is not something that's separable from who we are at the end of the day, right? I mean, this is cross-panel, cross-steering group, cross everybody involved. So it needs to pervade all of our activities. And that group has been quite active, has regular meetings, and a number of really interesting open sessions as well. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, Jesse, but maybe a little bit. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to point to Tom's question, which I think you were just starting to address. So go ahead, Nancy.
Everything you need from PSD. Yeah, I think we've been really pleased. Sometimes we ask for presentations in our open sessions without a ton of notice, and everybody seems to make their schedules available and support those sessions. And we really appreciate the priority for supporting this activity. And then to do the additional mission concept studies, that was also PSD supported and had to get done on a tight time frame in order to support getting this all done by next LPSC. So Alex, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you that we have everything we need, and that each of the panel chairs has a point of contact at NASA headquarters for their particular panel and topic. And when we have questions, we're able to reach out to them. And you know, for Ocean World and Dwarf Planets, it's Kurt Niebuhr, and he's been extremely responsive whenever we need information.
And I think maybe, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to add I'll bring this up. I'm not sure this is still true, but I know there's both Fran and Ed are well aware that there's been some difficulty getting demographic data out of NASA and the analysis of the data that they have in hand. So maybe you could just comment on whether you think you've gotten everything you can get, what's still being held back, and I know you already made that comment, Fran, but how much is it preventing you from doing the work that you want to do?
Yeah, Fran and Ed, I think it would be great if you guys want to chime in on that, because that's a good point, Carol.
I don't see Fran in the participants list anymore, so I guess I will take it.
Great.
We were having difficulty in getting data from PSD for the Inspires demographics besides the presentation that we were given, where we had to basically take out data by hand. Luckily, last week, I think it was, we received demographic data from Inspires and are able to then move forward and do all of that. The committee might be reaching out to PSD for some refinement to better understand the data. So you might be hearing from the panel chairs. But luckily we got data, so thank you for that.
Have you been reaching out to PSD or to Jim Green's Chief Scientist Office for that then?
We've been going through the Chief Scientist Office for, through Luis Barbier up through that chain of command.
All right, and Melissa, maybe you, Alex answered your question there in the chat about, this is that independent costing that's required of the survey, that you can't just like recommend to do a bunch of things and then you find out they're way too expensive. So that's what was meant by the sending out for costing. But Julie's question is about the RNA, because there was that open session that was held in March. I think a lot of us, tuned in to see that, and then what's going on with then since then. Carol, maybe you want to take that one at this, because it was a steering group sort of committee, or if not, me and Alex will give some perspectives.
Yeah, there's an ongoing work by a committee, and it will it will be featured prominently in the report. I think everybody will be would be happy about the way it's being treated. So that's what I can say.
Alex, you want to say anything else?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was great to see that open session happen, right? I mean, sort of the open sessions are a purview into sort of what people are talking about with all these other closed sessions and the many hours that go in besides that. So that happened, and that there were so many white papers written about it. Let me just say that that didn't go unnoticed either, that there were a lot of really thoughtful white papers on the topic.
And I would just add what I had on my final slide, which is that if there are additional topics you'd like to see discussed in open session, please recommend that send information to us. And if you have additional information or comments you'd like to send, we can always accept emails from the community to either of the chair, vice chair, or panel members.
And thank you, other members. Like you said, the panel membership is all known. This, makes it very accessible, hopefully, to everybody across the whole community to reach out to who you feel comfortable reaching out to. And I think it's been great. Alex and I have worked on a few cross-panel sort of things, and there's all this mingling going on, and everybody's working together for the planetary community.
Yeah, I might just add one thing to say that this is the first time the Decadal is trying to use this theme-based approach. And so everything they're doing is in some sense an experiment. And so I really just want to say that the steering committee and the chairs have done a great job of kind of herding us through this new process. That's a combination of both the target-focused panels and the thematically focused writing groups. And so hopefully what this Decadal is also doing is laying the groundwork for the next Decadal to have an easier time integrating these two concepts.
Julie raises the point about the planetary data ecosystem independent review board report that we were just talking about earlier. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of interesting things in there, and that might be, as far as I know, that hasn't been presented. It's hard. There's a lot of panels, and you have to like click on all those different web pages to see their agendas. So it's kind of challenging, but I don't think anybody's heard from that in an open session, and that might be worthwhile. You can see that a lot of the focus from the schedule I showed was like, make sure you get these missions done so you can send them to the coster and that sort of thing. And so now we're kind of moving into some other topics. So it would be timely, I think, to have that in an open session somewhere. People from one panel go to other people's open sessions and stuff. So you shouldn't read into too much where it happens, but I think that's an important thing to make happen somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. And Julie, you'll have to just think about where you think it makes the most sense to happen. I can say that we have discussed the report in at least our panel, and some of us have read it, but we haven't obviously had an open session topic on it or presentation.